during several weeks for 3 periods during their education. So they also do get to know schools, and it's quite common actually that the first position that you have as a teacher is at one of the schools that you have had your intern training. So that is also a way to get to know the school for the student, but it's the other way around too. Colleagues in the school get to know the new teacher as well. So I think that is that's one important way of hiring teachers, actually.
So what about retention? How are they well paid? Do they get benefits?
Well, I would say that the teacher's salary generally today is in the mid-range. It's not extremely high, and it's not a low salary. Teachers in general, say 50 years ago, used to have a more high status. But it's lower. But also, the local governments decides the level, so it can actually matter where in Sweden that you work as a teacher. That too is something that used to be on a national level. So there is a greater variety when it comes to teacher salaries today. And then, when it comes to work hours, it doesn't really differ much between teacher positions and other professions now.
In Sweden, do they pay per hour, or they pay weekly, or they pay monthly? How do they pay?
Yeah, it's a monthly pay. Wow. Yeah.
Because in the United States, they pay per hour. Well, it depends though. Sometimes you get a salary, but you might get paid bi-weekly, or you get paid per hour. So it's different. But I don't think anybody gets paid monthly in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I know there are countries where you do, like in Nigeria. Nigeria is West Africa. You get paid monthly, and I don't know how easy it is to wait an entire month to get paid. It's it must be tough.
Yeah, but that's a common system for So it was, I think, also some 50-60 years ago that weekly pay was common within the industrial professions. But nowadays the common way of doing it is a monthly pay.
Monthly pay. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So in the United States, we have the Common Core curriculum, which is a national standard for at least 41 states. The last time I checked, were working with the Common Core curriculum. The initial idea was to make sure all states are unified in one curriculum. They could all use it, and everything will be the same from state to state. But the way the United States is built, every state have their own decisions to make, especially when it has to do with education. So you can decide, I don't want to do Common Core, I want to do something else, and go ahead and do it. And also, like in my field, I'm in the preschool level, and I use, although the Common Core is like a base curriculum, there are other minor and smaller curriculum that we use. For instance, I'm creating mine. Actually, I created my curriculum that I use at my preschool. And I also use one of the curriculum called Creative Curriculum. And I use another curriculum called Abeka. So it's like you have the freedom to pick what you use and what suits your goals in your educational system. So in Sweden, how's your curriculum like?
Well, there is a national curriculum for elementary school, and then there is actually a curriculum for preschool as well.
Okay.
And then for upper secondary school, there's a greater variety because some of the educational programs are more oriented to vocational training, and they have their own curriculum, and then there are more theoretical courses that prepare students for university students. So they study. So they have their own curriculum, but all of these curricula are national, but there is a certain freedom with when it comes to how to apply the curricula, because it's for each subject, for instance, there is it is stated what topics should be included, but it doesn't say how much you focus on various topics. So there is a certain freedom, but when it comes to the overall curriculum, it is national. And also for the preschool, there is a curriculum with some general goals for mathematics education or mathematics learning, language acquisition, and so on.
Yeah. Wow. So how does the Swedish curriculum address STEM or STEAM, and what about special needs?
When it comes to STEM, the science, technology, mathematics education, mathematics is one of the core subjects. Yes, which I know is quite common in many countries. And it means that the core subjects, you have to pass them in order to be able to move on to upper secondary school. And there are three core subjects: Swedish language, English language, and mathematics. So there's quite a lot of focus on mathematics. And actually, just a few years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, the time for mathematics was extended. So the curriculum for mathematics is larger, which means that children get more teaching on mathematics. And then there has been quite a lot of discussion within various community for teachers and also within the teacher education system of how to use this extra time. Are we supposed to do the same but more of the same, or is it possible to approach the teaching in some other way? And then you mentioned the special education system. There are some special schools for students with special needs that cannot be really addressed within the mainstream school. But the main idea today is that all children are included within the mainstream school. But then it is very much up to the local school and the local government to decide how, when it comes to resources and so on. But there is all schools, or most schools have teachers or several teachers who are in charge of organizing the special education. And of course there is the teacher programs for special education needs as well. Yeah.
Wow. So what about arts? What about painting and sculptures, music and dance, carpentry? What about subjects like that?
Within the national curriculum, there is the arts subject, there is the music subject, you have crafts in all of the school years, and also sports or physical education that is included, where sports and also dancing is part of the curriculum. So all students do approach it. Also home economics, so there are quite a large portion of these more practical and aesthetic activities.
Are they elective courses you have to choose, or?
No, they are mandatory, so everybody
have to do
gets
it.
To do, yeah.
Can you tell me about home economics? Because I remember, I don't think they have it here in the United States the way they had it in Africa, where it just, it was like a course where students learned about the home, how to cook and how to do crochet, how to make the bed, Just
Yeah.
little things like that. Is that the way it is in Sweden?
Yeah, more or less, but it's actually it includes quite a lot of private economy and also nutrition.
Yeah.
So it's not. There is cooking, of course, included in it, but there's also these other
Aspects of
parts.
it.
Yes, so that's why we talk of economic. It's like partially a course in economy as well.
So there's the money,
Finances.
use of
Yes.
money. Oh yeah.
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 And hygiene when it comes to food and how to preserve food and so on.
Yeah. When I did home economics in Africa, there was home economics and there was economics. So they were
Okay.
they were
Yeah.
separated. Economics was all about money and
Mm.
banking and
Yeah.
business, but home economics was about nutrition and cleanliness and keeping the
Mm.
home and things like that. So it's interesting that they
Mm.
have that in Sweden. Yeah. Okay. So moving on, let's talk about, okay, in the United States, for instance, at the high school level, extracurricular activities, especially sports, are very central to building a school community,
Mm.
and not just at the high school level. I say that because at the high school level, it's taken very seriously. Like,
Yeah.
you know. But at the elementary, at the preschool, sports is something that is very important, to keep the children moving, to help their brains, to help them sleep, all kinds of benefits to extracurricular activities. How is that like in and I
Mm.
want to mention, like in Nigeria, where I had been to school, they had something they called inter-house sports, where you when you're enrolled at school, you pick a
Mhm.
color. So you could be in yellow house, green house, blue house, and the colors compete against themselves during the school year,
Mm.
or the school itself competes with a nearby school in the in the community, and then they win trophies, and it was a
Yeah.
huge, like an Olympics, you
Yeah.
know. So is there something like that in Sweden where you have?
Yeah, not as extensive, I would say. As I mentioned, the sports and physical education is part of the national curriculum, and there are some schools where it is possible to choose. They have like a profile of more physical education, so you might get some more of a certain sport.
Yeah.
And there is also schools can arrange various activities, maybe like 1 hour or 2 hours a week, where students can choose to enroll in extra arts courses or extra sports courses and so on. But it is not as extensive as I know that the American system, for instance, is doing this.
Yeah.
So when it comes to extracurricular activities like sports and so on, that is organized by other organizations in the community. So that's sort of separated from the school. There are some school competitions in certain sports, but it's not at all as common. And not far from everybody is taking part in that. So mainly that is the same with music teaching or art classes or drama courses, dancing courses. The majority of those kinds of activities are arranged by other course organizations. Yes, so it's not really part of the school in that sense.
Wow. Okay. So I know you are an expert in mathematics, So I talked to a lady in the Philippines, and Marife, that's her name, and she too is a mathematics teacher. And pre-COVID, she said mathematics was fine. She could take the children out, they could measure, they could do face to face, it was fun. But after COVID hit, especially a country like the Philippines, it was really bad. And they were on lockdown, but they still had to teach these children. So they did, she said they did something like print out some models of pages of mathematics book. Sometimes they had to send them to the children at their houses in the rural areas, or maybe the parents of those children came to school to pick up these booklets, and they had to study and they had to do exams. I mean, it was bad, especially with COVID. Then mathematics is a very technical subject. You know, you want to be there one-on-one. You want to show them how to go the route. You want to show them how to get to the answer to a question. You know, how is that like in Sweden? Since mathematics, I have noticed, because I've talked to various countries, and mathematics is a core subject everywhere you go. You know, how is it taught in Sweden? As with your experience?
Well, actually, I think this is part of the reason why the government and the authorities in Sweden have really tried to keep as much face-to-face teaching as possible, particularly at elementary school levels, because I do agree that this has been really one of the challenges. Fortunately, there are also several schools who have been able to engage in various online activities. There are nowadays some companies that develop not only printed materials, but also online, digital and online materials. So that has been helpful. But of course, it is challenging when you don't meet and can actually show with laboratory work or show more hands-on. And also, the way we communicate orally, the oral communication is also different when we meet online or in person. So I think mathematics has been one of the more challenging subjects to teach, actually.
Yeah. You know, I think that mathematics is one subject that requires face-to-face contact. You know, I know that technology is important. Technology can help, especially in situations where face-to-face is not possible. But you want to be, teachers had to just be extra creative to make sure their students were learning, especially in subjects like maths, you know, during the pandemic that we are still in now, you know. So it's amazing to know that all over the world it's almost the same thing, that there's an emphasis on face-to-face learning when it comes to mathematics. It's very important, you know, for children to have that. Because mathematics, as important as it is, it also can be difficult and tough for students to get. I'm not a mathematics person. Give me language anytime, but numbers.
But one challenge that I felt as a teacher when I do online teaching is that I don't really have the same feel for the students. I don't get the feel, even if when I see the faces on the screen, I don't really get the sense of how do they get what I'm talking about. Is there anything that I need to so there's a lot of many things go on in the classroom that is not possible to replicate online. So that's why I really hope that it will be possible to keep schools open nowadays.
And with the virtual learning, that other teacher, she told me some of the students, they mute their earpiece, you know, when they're done. She said when they get bored, they mute it. But if they control that, well. Okay, so let's talk about testing and assessment. You know, when teachers learn, you want to test their learning. When teachers teach, you want to test their teaching. So how is that like in Sweden?
Yeah, well, we have a system of so-called national tests. Students in grade 3, grade 6, and grade 9 get certain subjects tested nationally. In grade 3, the test concerns mathematics and Swedish language. And in grade 6, Swedish, English, mathematics. And in grade 9, Swedish, English, mathematics, and also science and social science. So there's quite a lot of testing. And also in upper secondary school, there are various national tests, but they differ due to the courses. Yeah, and these tests are supposed to be sort of a benchmark for nationally, and schools are also, the local government follow up the results of these tests and relate those results to the school's grading, the way the teachers grade. So there's like a correlation between that. Also, there are national agencies that, or a certain authority that do regularly regular visits to schools and also sort of assess the teaching and the quality of the school. Not every year, of course, because Sweden is a vast country, but there is a regular sort of checkup on the schools in that sense as well.
Wow, okay. So this is the last question, and it's a very important aspect of education. I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. Discipline. Student discipline is a very important aspect of learning. You know, without discipline in a classroom, you cannot teach. Children cannot learn. In the United States, we use positive reinforcement, positive discipline practices, where you talk to the child, you try to help the child, you don't yell, you don't hit, no physical no hitting, no corporal punishment like some other countries. But how is discipline in Sweden like?
Yeah, corporal punishment is, or hitting children is not allowed. It was banned since 40 years ago. That's generally in all societies. Parents are not allowed to slap their children and so on. But I can recognize what you mentioned about positive reinforcement, and also what I would say is very important is to create a good relationship to the caretaker of the students, and to have a communication relation to the home. Personally, I think I have been fortunate enough to work at schools where the discipline among the students has been good. Yes, and I can particularly see that when there is a very strong leader, where the principal is very explicit about his or her vision for the school, but also where the principal is able to connect to the students and to create relations with the students. So the personal side of the leadership is very important as well. But I would say that I think it also differs due to the qualification of the teacher, where I know schools where in other parts of Sweden where the problem of discipline has been quite severe. And I think it also, again, the teacher's education, the teacher's qualification and awareness of students' variation when it comes to various kind of needs, and also how to approach the teaching and each child. I think that too affects the discipline as well.
Do they use suspensions and expulsions like that? Do they? Because sometimes if the behavior is extreme, they do use that here.
Yes,
but it has to be extreme, you know. Before they do, okay.
Yeah, I mean, a teacher is allowed to do what he or she needs to do to keep the discipline in the classroom, as long as he or she is not physical towards the child. Suspension, sometimes it is allowed for the teacher to ask a student to leave the classroom if there is too much trouble. And it very rarely, seldomly happens, but it does. There is a possibility for the principal to also expel a student for 2 weeks, and in severe cases of discipline or other kinds of problems, they also are allowed to transfer the student to another school. It doesn't happen often at all, but there is this extreme action for extreme behavior.
Yeah. So do you have alternative schools for behavioral, for children with behavioral issues? You have schools like that?
Yes, there are. In each region, there are perhaps one or two for these severe disciplinary problems. Yes. Otherwise, there are also ways of solving it within the school. The national curriculum is mandatory for all schools, but in special cases, it is possible to let students to make the curriculum not mandatory for students. So, for instance, if there are behavior problems or if there is learning challenges, then the student has sort of a smaller curriculum. They don't, for instance, take all the natural science subjects. They don't take a second language and so on. So there are ways of adjusting the curriculum for an individual student. And that can sometimes be very helpful when it comes to discipline as well, to arrange the school situation for the student in order to make the student able to apply himself or herself. To cope during the more the shorter time, and also make the school day slightly shorter and so on. So those arrangements are prior to removing the student to a special school. But there are certain special
schools the kids can go to.
Yes.
Wow. Man, Hanna, it's been nice talking to you today. You know, I learned a lot about Sweden, and it's amazing how school systems all over the world can be similar and yet different. You know, it's just amazing. And I appreciate you coming today to talk to us about your country. And do you have like any last words about what we've discussed today?
No, I agree that it's interesting to learn that there are so many similarities. So when it comes to challenges, I think teachers struggle with more or less the same challenges, particularly now with the COVID situation. But also, I think it's interesting to know that I believe that there are more similarities than differences between people and nations.
Yeah. Thank you so much, for coming and for spending your time with me today. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot.
I appreciate that you invited me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But I want to ask